Adria has done a lot of extraordinary things. I'm just going to give you a couple little glimpses. She's on the board of Earlham School of Religion. She's been teaching in the School of the Spirit as one of their core teachers this year. It's quite an extraordinary course. It's called God's Promise Fulfilled, Encountering and Embodying Grace in the Shadow of Empire. She has a particular concern for gifts and has a wonderful Pendle Hill pamphlet you can find in the bookstore on spiritual gifts and embracing those. She's also done something that is kind of unusual for Quakers today. For 200 years, Quakers had a tradition of recognizing when a friend had a calling to be a vessel for God to build up the life of our community by recording ministers, recognizing them. It didn't mean they were the only people who spoke in meeting, but it meant that the meeting recognized this gift and nurtured it and then held the friend accountable for faithful exercise of that gift. When my quarterly meeting, Connecticut Valley, applied to join New England Yearly Meeting, they said they would only be willing to join the yearly meeting if they didn't have to record ministers. And the yearly meeting let them in on that basis. And some of our quarters, you might not know that, record ministers, and others do not. It's a way we're diverse, the way Martha was talking about this morning, and embracing differences. When Deb Humphreys felt a lead to travel under religious concern, she asked Hartford Meeting to write a minute of travel for her. And it took them 2 or 3 years to reach unity on whether they would even write a traveling minute for her, but they eventually did. I'm not sure how long it took, but Adria also went through that process with New York Yearly Meeting and recently was recognized by the Yearly Meeting as a recorded minister. I'd like to read you a few lines from the report of that committee that met with her. We met in several prayerful sessions with each other and with Adria, learning about her deep sense of conversation with Spirit as she follows leadings to speak truth to power, even where she expects the message may not be welcome. She lives out her faithfulness to God, her family, and her Quaker community in direct and observable ways, and speaks plainly about the messages she receives from God about how friends are to live in the world. Adria's sense of commitment to her faith and her community calls her to name injustices and hypocrisies as she sees them and to hold tenderly the people whose behavior she names. Within her monthly meetings, she's known for being both direct and for using her gifts to bring friends together. Adria also maintains strong connections with an anchor committee at Chatham Summit monthly meeting, which helps her discern the difference between Spirit's directions and the world's desires. She continues to grow as a minister and a friend. We affirm Adria DiCapua's gift of prophetic witness as evidenced by her vocal ministry and broad scope of teachings, and this gift should be recorded. It is clear to this committee that Adria exhibits the gift of prophetic witness, and that this gift has been sustained over a number of years. Through her vocal and written ministry in monthly and yearly meeting settings and her various teachings, she provides Quakers with a model for us all to be embracing our spiritual gifts. The last thing that Adria asked me to share with you is that she's an active member of a group called the Friends of Jesus Fellowship. One of the things we try to do to practice in New England Yearly Meeting is It's a strange term. If you're new, ask someone to explain it. Listening with tongues. What it means is that we have different words for describing our experience of the divine, Holy Spirit, living water, Jesus, inward teacher. We learn to listen with open hearts to each other's words, even when they're different than the ones we use ourselves. I know that you will receive and listen to Adria's words in that spirit this week, and may we all be changed and transformed by them.
Brethren, we have met to worship and adore the Lord our God. Will you pray with all your power as we try to preach the word? All is vain unless the Spirit of the Holy One comes down. Will you pray that holy blessings will be showered all around? Good morning, friends. So I'm getting some cupped ears in the back. I will try to project. Is my mic on? Yes? All right. It is a tremendous blessing to be with you this morning, and I almost just want to sit down and continue the worship that we started, and I trust that we'll proceed in that same spirit of worship as God invites us to be renewed and refreshed by the living water. But I do have an invitation, and we'll see if it's short or long, depending on the leading of the Spirit, into a state of gatheredness, a theme that's already been shared this morning. I'm always just so tickled when the Spirit sends out the radio waves and all the antennas on all the different channels are picking up the same message. But we'll start in the book of Numbers, and I wonder if we can have the slide up as a starting point. As Christina said this morning, the theme this week, Spring Up a Well, comes from that passage in Numbers. The Israelites' journey from bondage into the promised land, but standing in neither bondage nor the promised land, but in that space of wilderness. So reading from chapter 21 of Numbers, they traveled from Mount Hor. They don't have it? I love it. Thank you so much. And I don't know if you can make it full screen, but we'll do what we can. I'm making a conscious decision not to be preoccupied with the screen and to trust that God will give us what we need to be fed, tech or no tech. So they traveled from Mount Hor along the route to the Red Sea to go around Edom. But the people grew impatient on the way. They spoke against God and against Moses and said, "Why have you brought us up out of Egypt?" I'm going to try to get away. Okay. "Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? There is no bread. There is no water. And we detest this miserable food." There is a legend of a time, and I don't remember if it was FGC or New York Yearly Meeting, where they ran out of ice cream halfway through. And it was very much along the lines of the Israelites complaining to Moses and to God. And then the Lord sent venomous snakes among them, and they bit the people, and many Israelites died. So that did not happen in our friends' gathering. The people came to Moses and said, "We sinned when we spoke against the Lord and against you. Pray that the Lord will take the snakes away from us." So Moses prayed for the people. The Israelites moved on and camped at Oboth. Then they set out from Oboth and camped at Iye-abarim in the wilderness that faces Moab towards the sunrise. And from there they moved on and camped in the Zered Valley. They set out from there and camped along the Arnon, which is in the wilderness extending into Amorite territory. The Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. And from there they continued along to Beer, the well where the Lord said to Moses, "Gather the people together, and I will give them water." Then Israel sang this song: "Spring up, O well, sing about it, about the well that the princes dug, that the nobles of the people sank, the nobles with their scepters and staff." The Lord said to Moses, "Gather the people together, and I will give them water." Israel shows us in this story and throughout gospel history what it means to be a people. A people is not just a group of individuals, but an organic whole. When the people cursed Moses and God for bringing them into the wilderness, they were punished as one. When they repented and sought God's provision, they were blessed as one. As the Lord says, "Gather the people together, and I will give them water." If you can advance the slide. So this word "people" often comes up in friends' writings. And I'm just going to name a few that were mentioned in Chuck Fager's piece, "Friends as a Chosen People." But in one Quaker pamphlet in 1660, the author says, "As concerning the Quakers, as they are so scornfully called, we are at this day, and have been ever since we were a people, a poor, despised, and contemptible people in the eyes of the world, and deep sufferers under the injustice, and cruelties and oppressions. And this has been ever since the Lord raised us up to be a people. Margaret Fell said, "We have been a suffering people under every power and change in the nation these 12 years since we were a people." And George Fox's famous quote that God had shown him that there was a great people to be gathered, and even more so, that Christ was come to teach his people himself by his power and spirit in their hearts. As friends, we face a temptation. We prioritize, rightfully so, our relationship with the light. One of my very favorite songs is "He Leadeth Me." And sometimes it's that individual view, me and God, the Spirit in my heart, that feels so important. I wait to be led. But there are some blessings that we can only receive as a body, as a unified whole greater than the sum of its parts. Gather the people together, and I will give them water. This is a recurrent theme in Scripture, but I want to lift up a particular image, and if you can go to the next slide, please. Therefore, so this is from Paul's letter to the Philippians. And he says, "Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purposes. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may be blameless and pure, children of God without fault, in a warped and crooked generation." That's the assignment. Be a people, but not a people bound by kinship, not a people bound by blood, by connection to the land, all of the traditional ways of understanding peoplehood. Not even a people in the Enlightenment sense that we share principles and beliefs. But Paul is very, very specific about what it means to be a people gathered in the Spirit. And they're things that should sound familiar to us as friends. Share in the Spirit. We call that worship. Be of one mind and one heart. We call that corporate discernment. Serve each other with a joyful heart. Give each other our time, our energy, our money. Serve each other in love. Take care of each other. Don't insist that others conform to our ideas, but trust that God is already working in each one of us to bring us into his image, to align us with his will. Lay down our ambitions, our agendas, our personal ideas of right and wrong, and welcome humility, serving faithfully, whether or not we are seen or recognized, knowing that the one that we serve sees all and rewards the love that we show to each other by multiplying it among us. So first, I'm going to invite you to have a nice chuckle at the fact that I'm standing on a stage telling you to serve faithfully without being recognized. I thought that was kind of funny. When I wrote it, I was like, oh, that's a little funny. Serve in the hidden places. But then I'm going to ask us, do we recognize ourselves in that image? Does that describe our religious society? Do we like being together? Do we actually like being together? Do we take care of each other? Go out of our way for each other? Support each other materially when we are in need? I think often about the fact, so when I was here, the last time I was with you in New England was in 2018, and I was very blessed to participate in the plenary panel, and Frederick gave some very encouraging words after the panel, and I see him, and I feel blessed. And Christina and Honor prevented me from having a meltdown, and I think about that at least like once every couple of weeks about how they talked me off the ledge when I was going to drive back to New Jersey in my car and not give the panel because I had a toddler, and it was a lot. So there are these wonderful moments where we show up for each other in amazing ways. But then I also think about the fact that literally 6 months later, less than 6 months later, when my ex-husband announced to me that he was leaving our family, I was held in the light. Now, I love being held in the light, and so many friends have said that they're praying for me, and I have felt the prayers of friends. But man, getting divorced, getting a new job, getting a new career, that stuff is not free. Now, I was part of a community in Friends of Jesus Fellowship where they were like, hey, this stuff is not free. Let's pass the hat. But I wonder, when we have these moments of crisis, do we know each other well enough to love each other, really love each other, in a way that puts food on the table? And are we generous enough? My uncle is a Baptist pastor, and they wanted to build a youth center. They felt really strongly God was calling them to do something for the kids. And they had what he called a Jubilee year, and the encouragement was to give until it hurts. Now, we say that a different way. Early friends said, well, the reason we don't pay our ministers, right, is because we have received freely, and we should give freely. Do we give freely to each other? And if we do all of those things, do we do that last thing that Israel did when they got their well, and that is sing about it? Do we proclaim the good news? Do we invite others into fellowship? Do we share out of the bounty that God has given us so liberally, so generously, so extravagantly? What an amazing thing it is to be here, to gather here. What an amazing demonstration of resources, the time, the energy that I showed up, but you all are amazing. There are golf carts going, taking people to and from. Kara's got the kids, and there's an army of volunteers. I don't even know where my son is. I know he's right? I don't have any idea, but I know he's safe. I know he's fine. I know he's being enriched and formed in community. Like, what an amazing show of commitment. Are we being intentional and invitational about expanding the scope of that bounty, of that abundance? So that's the first question. Do we recognize ourselves in Paul's invitation to be a people? Is that us? But now if we zoom out a little bit, I'm going to ask a question which I think you'll probably recognize as rhetorical. Is that the spirit of our age? Do we live in an age that encourages us to gatheredness? You can go to the next slide, please. It has never been a good time to be a gathered people. Otherwise, the gospel would not have been, Israel would not have been a people set apart. The gospel would never have mattered. If it were ever easy, we wouldn't even be here because we wouldn't need it, right? We'd all be doing this already. But in this moment that we're in our social landscape, in our technological landscape, I don't even know. It is hard for me to imagine what it would even look like to be a gathered people. And I think about it a lot. So even more so for people who don't spend like hours thinking about like, what would it mean to be like a gathered people? What would that look like? And you see it on different axes, right? You see this incredible push towards division, towards isolation, towards, an incredible self-centeredness. Matt Damon was just talking about how it is hard to even make a movie because if you don't grab people in the first 5 minutes, they'll switch. In an age where our attention is so fractured, can we be present to each other and to God? In an age of tech entrepreneurship and messianic politicians, you've heard the one say, I alone can fix it. You guys remember I alone can fix it? What does it mean to embrace humility when our most visible leaders are the ones who command the spotlight, who are not trying to empower, but see themselves as the one who can make the change? How can we even talk about setting aside vanity and conceit in the age of the selfie and the filter and the curated life on social media, where even the most innocent decision about which photograph to post, I should post this one looks better, is an act of distancing, an act of artifice, something that puts a space between us and our friends? How can we talk about looking to the interests of others in a time where every encouragement is made to treat each other as interchangeable commodities to be used and discarded at will, rather than beings who are fearfully and wonderfully made, just a little below the angels, crowned with glory and honor? I saw a statistic preparing for today's session that 1.4 million Americans are creators on OnlyFans. Raise your hand if you don't know what OnlyFans is. Oh, wonderful. Okay. I am so glad I asked. Oh, my heavens. Oh my goodness. So see, this is a good moment. This is a good moment. I don't know whether to apologize in advance or wait until after to apologize for taking your innocence. And it's so beautiful. Oh my gosh, the purity in this room is like inspiring. I am inspired. So OnlyFans is a content creation platform where some people show people how to do algebra and quantum physics, and some people cook and demonstrate recipes, but most people create pornographic material. I'm sorry. I'm sorry we had to have this talk. So now, with that piece of background knowledge in your heart, and you just carry that around with you and pray about it this week, understanding that we have 1.4 million American content creators on OnlyFans should invite us to reflect. And let me say, part of the discourse, and if you really want some rabbit holes, I can give you some rabbit holes, but you probably don't want them, and that's fine. But part of the discourse that you see online is, why give it for free if you can make a living from it? So we are in a culture where, listen, there's always been prostitution, concubines, there's always, and every marriage is in some degree an exchange. So we're mostly adults in the room. This is not new. But this particular transactional exchange, where I don't know you, you don't know me, but we're exchanging money for sexual access, has mostly been marginal in our society, contemporary America. It is not marginal today, because you don't have to walk the street, you don't have to have an agency, you don't have to skirt the law, all you have to do is sit in your room. We are in a culture that encourages us to slap a price tag on everything, no matter how personal, no matter how sacred, no matter how holy and God ordained, no matter how precious and beautiful. I just read an article where the surrogate is suing the parent because the baby she's carrying was found to have a heart defect, and the contract stipulates that she get an abortion. So she is suing the parents to save the life of the child. Still an open question how that will shake out in the courts. That's the landscape that we're in. That's the cultural water. That's the cultural wilderness that we're in. It is commodification. It is transaction. It is chopping our lives into 1,000 teeny tiny slices, and each one has a price tag on it. In the face of all of that we're taking in every time we turn that on, every time we get on the TV, and even if we don't do any of those things, we're taking it in from our neighbors and friends. The culture will catechize us. It will give us its doctrine. It will give us its lesson. And we will absorb it, and we will know the answers even if we don't know the answers to every question and point of doctrine, because that is the weight and the way of the world. Inertia will take us in that direction. So in the face of all of that, what would it look like to be a gathered people in love, submission, service, generosity, and joy? That's my hope for the next few days, that we talk about and explore a little bit what it would look like to be that gathered people, what we might have to pick up and lay down to make ourselves gatherable by the Spirit, because in this current world, right, maybe we're not ready to be gathered. And maybe there's some things we might have to do individually to prepare ourselves to be gathered. But I want to invite us to, one, see this wilderness that we're in so clearly. See it really as it is. And then welcome the inflowing of a vision of what it could be if we welcome those waters in. So with that, I'm going to sit on that chair with the wheels in it and invite us to use the remainder of the time. I believe they're mic runners. Beautiful. There's somebody in the back waving a microphone. I want to invite us to enter into a spirit of worship. But if you have a ministry to share, or a question or an observation that you can offer in a spirit of worship, we've got 20 minutes. I would love, listen, we've got 20 minutes and 4 days, and I'm around, so we can do this. But that's my invitation to us now.